Hi, and welcome to Embrace Life. So I'm Samantha Thomas, and Embrace Life UK is my business. I say that I took it down quite a while ago now because just the amount of misinformation in the wellness industry is overwhelming. Um, I was a PT and a nutrition coach for quite some time, and I just found I was banging my head against a brick wall, and everything became confusing, and so I stepped back. However, my plan was always to come back and do something, especially with the YouTube channel. So here I am. This seems a nice opening as RFK Jr. has just launched a new food pyramid. And I'm going to give my take on this. Bear in mind, I'm not a nutrition expert. I'm not a I'm not a nutritionist. Definitely not a dietitian. And the only people you should be taking dietary advice from, as in meal recommendations, technically in the UK, I can speak for, are qualified dietitians. So I just want to preface that with everything. So anything that I say is based on my opinion, anecdotal evidence, what's worked for me, where I've done work with clients and what's worked for them as a coach, not as someone who has told them what they should and shouldn't be eating, but as a coach just to help them find out what works and what doesn't for them. And that's the difference between uh, being a coach and them being actually dogmatic about this is what you should do. I'm not dogmatic in any way, shape, or form. So the traditional food pyramid in the UK did get scrapped. It must have been around 2011, 2012, if I remember right. If I'm wrong, feel free to leave a comment in there. Like I said, I'm new coming back to this. This is like coming back to it again for the first time, although I have a lot of experience and information. I've slept for the last year or so. I've just stepped away from it and kind of ignored it because become massively overwhelming. So the Eat Well guide is something that I used to um, teach within the NHS. I was employed by a company who was contracted by the NHS to help people lower their weight, and that this were for people who were clinically obese, had diabetes, high cholesterol, at risk of heart attacks. So I worked within that company for 18 months doing a 12-week course, a recurring 12-week course on nutrition and exercise. And then with my own private clients, I did the same thing as a personal trainer, and then nutrition coaching. I would never ever tell people what to eat. I might make recommendations, but I wouldn't tell them what to eat. And that distinction is really, really important, because ultimately we're all the same but different, as the contradictory saying goes. We all have different needs, and we all respond to certain things differently depending on contraindications, medical stuff, hereditary factors, things that I'm just not qualified or comfortable giving too much more than generic information because I'm just not qualified and I don't know. So the Eat Well guide was an easy teach. It's, to me it seems like a common sense approach, but over the years I have found that the grained section of the Eat Well guide just doesn't work for me anymore. So I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome in 2019. I do believe a lot of that is stress related and has impacted my parasympathetic nervous system, therefore my digestive system. As a result, I don't seem to be able to digest gluten and grains very, very well at all anymore. It's so much so that they leave me foggy, leave me feeling ill, achy, um, absolutely lethargic and tired. Though I don't, and I can't sleep even though I'm absolutely shattered. And so I changed my own way using the premise of the Eat Well plate, where I do eat plenty of fruits and vegetables, mainly dried fruit and fresh vegetables. That's just the way that I prefer it. Or I eat chutneys, and warm fruits with meats and stuff like that. But I definitely have a higher intake of saturated fats, and not so much a higher intake of non-saturated fats, which goes against the recommendations of the Eat Well plate, and actually goes completely in line with what RFK Jr. has recently proposed, which has caused a lot of controversy. So let me show you. Let me show you that. that that recommendation. The new pyramid. Here we go. The new pyramid. So this is the new pyramid that RFK Jr. and the FDA have just launched. And admittedly, I find it very interesting because I find it hard to disagree with them, although my education and my knowledge is contrary to what their beliefs are. And over the years, I've followed many vegans, many people who are carnivore, paleo, keto, vegetarian diets, and I've seen the way these things interact. I've also seen diets or nutrition ideas used to manipulate people into thinking certain things and around certain belief systems, and it does go into kind of cults, spiritual health and wellness. I'm not going to get into that on this channel. I've got a different channel for that, so I'm going to keep well away from that. But there is evidence that actually cutting out certain fats from your diet and going into veganism can reduce cognitive ability, and that's where I'm going to leave it at that, because I just don't want an argument, and I don't want to get into a whole line. Like I say, it's been a while, I don't want to fight about it. All I'm here to do today is really give my two pence worth on this new food pyramid, based on my own, and it is anecdotal experience. And for me, it is, if I eat fruits, it's grapes, it's bananas. If it's fresh fruits, if it's other fruits, like I said earlier, it's dried fruits, it's canned fruits, or it's pureed fruits like chutneys and jams and those kind of things. I do find that if I eat too much meat, that I then crave vegetables. So this is where I kind of swing on the balance. If I want carbs, I tend to stick to potatoes and occasionally have rice. It sounds mega boring, and I can tell you it is it is mega boring. But I suffer every time I eat bread. Every time I have something with gluten or wheat in, I do suffer. Um, and it's almost instantaneous now, and it feels like a hangover. It's deeply unpleasant, and this is why I just don't want that feeling, so I just don't eat those foods anymore. So I'm not a massive fan of RFK Jr. and the whole administration, but I do find it hard, in from a personal experience and a personal bias, and make that very clear, it's personal bias, to disagree with their food pyramid. So and that's really just my take on it. When people argue over the lobbyists and people who have funded and put money in so that so that the food pyramid turns out a certain way to increase sales, etc., etc. This has been going on since the turn of the 20th century. The original food pyramid, which was massively influenced by Ansel Keys, was definitely lobbied in the sense of Kellogg's, in the sense of whole grains. Let's get away from agricultural stuff. And the book, The China Study, really, and I read that when I first became qualified as a PT, and it sounded really, really good. And so I went into a more plant-based diet myself based on what was in that book. And I just found I got more and more ill. But other people find they get better when they eat stuff like that. So again, when I say everybody is different, everybody is different. At 32, I started losing my hair. I started getting brain fog. I started feeling really, really unwell, and I shouldn't have done. And this has been an ongoing thing for me for a long time. And the only thing for me, that I found has reduced that is up in my iron intake, and I do that through red meat, is reducing whole grains and grains full stop, to the point now I just don't really have them. And then I find I can think clearer, my energy comes back, and I'm not in pain. And I don't lose my hair, and my nails are a lot healthier. So I have a lot of bone broth based stuff. I'm a former chef. I'm very, very lucky that I can cook and I don't have to think about what I'm doing. It is second nature to me. And I have found over the years working with people that people the convenience of cooking just isn't there anymore. So it's down to convenience food. So people don't enjoy cooking, they just don't want to, or they just don't even care about food. Which again, there's horses for courses. We're all built slightly differently, and so I'm not rigid in the way that I think about food. I suppose this is why I never wanted to be a nutritionist, because there's a rigidity that sets into that in my view and in my experience. And I just think it's safer to practice for yourself. The the advice that overlaps between the two styles is eating fresh foods, fresh meats, lowering sugars and processed foods, and really just going as kind of natural as possible without making it boring. And I think that is basically the best takeaway we can all get from this. So whether you follow the Eat Well guide, look at the new pyramid, look at the old pyramid, see what works for you. If you are vegan or vegetarian and that's your preference, again, make it work for you. Nobody should be telling you that it's absolutely right or absolutely wrong. That's your decision to make for yourself. In the same way I've made the decisions for myself, I'm never ever going to be vegan or vegetarian, because the more plant based I go, the more ill I get. But I do recognise equally that I need plant based products like fresh fruits and vegetables, especially green vegetables, your broccoli, lettuce, spinach, rocket, and things like that do serve me very, very well. And then I don't eat so much carrots. I do notice if I don't have enough stuff with the right kind of beta carotene in. So tomatoes, carrots, red peppers, anything kind of that colour, if you like, that it does affect my eyesight. And so all I do is then I go and I make sure I have coleslaw with carrots in it. I'll have tomatoes. I'll make sure I do more stir fries with red peppers or whatever else, and I find that quickly corrects itself. But I can't say that this is what works for everybody, because I'm not a medical professional and no nutritionist is a medical professional. There's certain nutrients in certain foods that definitely help with all areas of our well-being, whether that's your skin, your hair, your eyes, your gut, and all these things. And you've kind of just got to work out what works for you, what your digestive system is willing to take on. But having a basic understanding of how nutrition works massively helps. So I used to run a nutrition course that basically taught people the understanding the basics of nutrition. So when putting meals together, they understood what they were doing in the same way I've just described when I put my meals together. I know what I'm doing and I know what benefit I'm going to get from it. So I don't need to be dogmatic about it. I just pass on the information. The information there is information from the NHS, from the British Dietetics Association, from the British Association of Nutritional Therapists, which is banned in the UK. Um, and their information tends to be very, very reliable and very consistent and not inflammatory in any way. And when I say inflammatory, it's not dogmatic. It's not they're trying to do it for views or for clickbait or anything like that, which we see now all over social media. They do it just because it's the advice according to scientific recommendations. So I'm going to leave that there and leave